Oh, welcome back, everybody. So we have some time now to debrief what happened in your explorations, and after that, I'd like to help somebody go deeper and explore their experience further if they'd like to deepen their learning. So let's start by hearing what happened in the breakout rooms, in the small groups, and it would be great to hear like some key insights and some aha moments or shared experiences or challenges from your group. So maybe a few of the facilitators could share, and maybe other small group facilitators, if you could please type a few notes into the chat, but not hit send yet. That would be great. Um,
Lane?
so yeah,
Oh, do you want us to just put it in the chat or do you want us to share something now?
if a couple could share out loud, and
Okay.
the others who aren't going to share out loud just write some stuff in the chat.
Okay, well,
Um,
I have an interesting one. I don't know if it's an aha moment, but basically a person in my group had an incident just yesterday, I believe, where she wanted someone to mediate something. And the person she asked was a Black woman. And it ended up kind of turning itself into something difficult between this white woman and this Black woman. And in the moment, the white woman didn't think anything of it, but she said starting this morning, she's been rehashing it and wondering if there was a racial component to it that she didn't notice, and now starting to feel nervous and a gaping hole, etc. So it's rethinking and reviewing incidents that people have been in and wondering if they just didn't notice something. So
yeah, that's right. You don't know. You don't know. Sometimes we don't get the feedback, and so we don't know. But and I appreciated what you said. There was a gaping hole, so that was more the kind of somatic experience of that. Then there's all the cognitive part. Did I miss something? What happened? And then there's like this that emotional,
that was, yeah, and
visceral
that was her wording. That's a quote from her.
gaping
So
hole. Yeah, thank you, Jordana. Daisina.
Okay. Yeah, so I had kind of something similar to what Jordana said is my group really got into the body and the emotions and didn't stay in their head, and that was really amazing. One talked about being in the conversation and rushing backward and feeling like she was leaving her body. And she described her kind of like the bones in her cheek hollowing out as her body felt like it was hollowing out in that experience. And then there were inside of the conversation, there was active participation and noticing, even as someone was sharing. They were saying, "Oh my goodness, I can still feel that I'm trying to be politically correct. Let me put this in another way." And so it was happening in the moment, which was beautiful. And there was a conversation about really feeling safe in the space to verbalize it and go deeper. And so the value in these sessions was brought to the forefront.
Wow. Thanks, Daisina. And I imagine for some, I don't know about this person you're talking about, but I imagine for some, having a black facilitator and have to talk about your white defensiveness could bring up white defensiveness on its own. Yeah. So thank you for hanging in there yourself. Yeah. Yeah. So another group want to share? Katie, go on.
So we had a common theme too that I thought was interesting. Um, a lot of members like feeling small and vulnerable and almost going back in time to childhood, and having this feeling of wanting to cry and feeling helpless, um, but ultimately like not feeling their own age. So going back to a point in time when as if they were children, which I thought was really interesting and important.
Yeah. Thank you, Katie. That's so important. That Resma Menakem in his book My Grandmother's Hands talks so much about racial trauma and how when we are in a trauma reaction, we go back to other moments in our lives when we have been traumatized. And so we have an implicit memory of something. The trauma lives in our bodies, actually. So it very often does feel like, ooh, I'm not my age. I'm not any longer an adult who's able. And that's partly because the prefrontal cortex is gone. And we're just like in our body experience. And that's a trauma reaction. So thank you. Yeah. So let's, if could you all hit send on the chat so that we can see some of the other things that were said? And Irina, would you mind reading some of those? You're on mute.
Yes. Okay. Grief of losing relationships due to racism and white defensiveness, and feeling tired and ashamed of that, of how it severs relationships. Other folks mentioning shame, feeling altered, feeling frozen, wrong. A Black participant sharing fear, trauma, sobbing, needing to escape. That's a repeated theme as well, needing to escape, move away. Emotions of fear, confusion, guilt, disloyalty, body signals of quivering in the stomach, body agitation, anxiety, tightness, constriction also was mentioned in our group. Other folks mentioning anxiety and feeling that they don't know the right way to connect or to be with each other. Questions of how to honor the messiness of our growing awareness and not just be good, but also yet still show up with care and affirmation of the experiences of the other. The shock of a white person being called out by a Black person. Right, the difficulty of sharing, being white facilitator and having only white participants in my group once said they would not feel as comfortable sharing their defensiveness in front of Black participants, which is a defensive reaction.
Wow, that is great.
Yeah, also folks mentioning irritation and anger and knowing that for a Black person, there's often not the option to feel the anger and knowing that if one brings that forward as a person of color, the consequences may be very different for them than for a white person.
That was a person of color saying that? Yeah. Right.
Rage, shame, fear, self-judgment, criticism, tensing up.
Right. Yeah, thank you. I see Susie said, I separate myself out by being good. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Irina. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. Maybe just to mention one thing, all the different ways that people have mentioned of distancing themselves and distracting and checking out and trying to create some kind of buffer.
Yeah.
I'm seeing threaded through here.
Thank you for highlighting that. That's so important. Yes. That dissociation. You know, I'm gone, going to addictions or whatever. Yeah. Whatever our choice is for checking out. Yeah. I just want to come back to one thing that I said before and just put a finer point on that. I said that when we feel like a trauma reaction, we go back to a younger part of ourselves. And I just want to say that it's not the Black person who's traumatizing us, right? It's that we can get triggered and we go back to our trauma. That doesn't mean that that person is traumatizing me. That's a super important distinction. So didn't want to let that go by. Yeah, my kids say stuff that brings me back to being a little kid. They're not traumatizing me. They're just do something that reminds me of that moment. So, all right.
Thank you for saying that, Lane. That feels really important.
Okay, so now we have time to deepen with somebody. So if you are somebody who felt like you got into something that feels like you could learn more from or would like to explore more, uh, that would be great to maybe use the reactions button on the bottom to raise your hand.